Done. Um, I suppose some of you might know what the Ecsite Conference is, but let's take 5 minutes to go through it so you are all on the same page. This is an annual meeting of around 1,000 science engagement professionals from science centers, science museums, science festivals, universities, exhibition companies, and many, many other science engagement stakeholders. We offer to those people around 100 sessions that are created bottom-up by the community of science engagement professionals, meaning hopefully also by you. Besides those 100 parallel sessions, we also offer 1 day of whole day pre-conference workshops, more focused on learning and going in depth into certain topics. We also present you with inspiring keynote speeches, and we give you a chance to meet with over 70 companies that support the science engagement field in our Business Bistro trade show. On top of that, this conference is quite famous from its unique social events and plenty of networking experiences and opportunities. So it's a place to be if you want to connect with your peers and if you want to share and learn about science engagement. Next year, I actually have to move a little bit to show it. Next year, we are going to Malta. These are the dates of the conference, mid of June, beautiful weather in Malta. We are hosted by the Esplora Interactive Science Center. There will be we will be their guests, and they are responsible for the logistics and all the fun of the program. The main venue of the conference is an intriguing medieval conference center. You will be able to use those rooms and many other to host your sessions. And what's the best about Malta? It's just by the sea. Basically, every venue we'll be visiting is just at the sea. So it's also a nice opportunity to get some sun and maybe a swim in a break before the conference. That's briefly where we'll be going and what we'll be doing in 2023. Now I would love to take a couple of minutes for the main part of this meeting, more people coming. I would like to walk you through step by step the submission process for the session proposals. After I finish, I will give some space to Brad to share 2 or 3 tips from his perspective as the chairperson of the program committee. And then we have plenty of time for questions you might have to me and to Brad about the call for proposals or the conference in general. Before I start, I will post in the chat a couple of useful links. You might want to save them for later. I'll be mentioning some of those linked websites in a bit. Here you go. And now, unfortunately, I have to stop this immersive thing and just simply share my screen. So the call for proposal is accessible through the Ecsite website. And there's one thing that you need to know, not maybe too obvious. To access it, you need to have your account on our website. So if you have it, you can simply log in here. If you don't have it, this is also the place where you can set up a new account. There's a minimum of data we require. This really helps us to organize the program and contact your speakers, and so on. I'll be using my field agent, Chris Kelvin, to show you around the call for proposals. I simply log in. And then in the conference site, you will find the call for proposals web page. Basically, all the information about the conference will be appearing on this site. But for you, if you want to submit a session, it will be really good to have a look at all those information here. So there's the schedule of the call, some tips, overview of all the speaking opportunities. I will talk briefly about those in a bit. And most importantly, you can submit your session by clicking a Submit Session button. Just remember that please don't leave this for the last minute, the submission, especially if you don't have a user account, because we accept every account manually to avoid spam. So might take us a day to react, especially if you try to do it over the weekend. So it's best to start a little bit earlier before the final deadline at the end of October. That's how the session submission form looks. You have few checkboxes at the beginning. Yes, we are accepting only serious proposals, which means that if you will be selected, we will expect you to come to the conference. All the speakers, facilitators, all the participants of the conference have to cover the conference fee. So please make sure that people you involve in your session do have an intention to come to the conference at some point. This is very important for us because we get a lot of proposals and we have to say no to some people. So if you get a yes, that means that someone else didn't get a place and an opportunity to do that. And it's please make sure that you really want to come. And there's, of course, a traditional image sign off for the conference. And here we go with the content. So you need the title of the session. Let's say how to submit a session proposal. And you need an abstract, of course. That's pretty typical for all the conferences. We'll be looking at the way it's written also. Feel free to write it in a way that would invite people to come and join your session, make them curious, and also clear enough for the conference program committee to understand what you want to do. So the abstract, what should I write here? We will show you how to submit a proposal. One of the things that helps, and we also look at it while judging the session and scoring them, is the learning outcomes for the participants. This is not shown in the program in the end, but it's really useful for us to see what do you plan to share, what do you think the participants will get out of this session. In my case, participants will learn how to submit a session. And here where the more interesting fun begins, more typical for our conference. We are looking for session submissions for both the main conference, where sessions happen in parallel, sessions last 75 minutes, or pre-conference workshops. They are on the first day before the conference in 14 June, and they last a whole day, more or less from 9 till 6 p.m. You need to make a decision here. When you select main conference session, we will ask you to tell us what kind of format you want to use for your session. Of course, we accept typical formats of the conferences like panels, workshops, and so on. But the more creative you get, the better sometimes. If it fits your content, if you have an idea how to deliver the content in an engaging way, I don't know, something that you use in your science center to engage your participants, or something you saw another conference, this also gives us an opportunity to score the session better. Of course, sometimes regular panel works the best, but this conference is usually full of very creative moments. For example, with formats like Pechakcha, where speakers have 20 slides, each lasting 20 seconds and no control over slides, or different kind of debates, group workshops, and so on and so on. For example, my session will be, I would say, what is this? A lecture, I guess, at this point. Q&A. This is a compulsory field, and if you're suggesting some kind of unusual format we might not know, it's good if you could provide us with a simple explanation what it is about. If you decide to go to submit a pre-conference workshop, we will not ask you for the format because it's usually a day full of different activities. We will ask you for a draft walkthrough through the day to see more or less what you plan to do throughout the day. And for the capacity of the workshop and a bit of a definition, who is this workshop for? Usually the pre-conference workshops are quite focused on certain topics or certain groups. That's why we need this information to judge whether this is enough content, enough ideas to fill a full day of a workshop. And besides that, this is the main difference between those two submissions. So let's continue with the main conference session. This is a not very important field, but if you need to see any special request to your session at this stage, I don't know, you need a room without light, for example, because you'd want to do a confession session where people share without seeing each other. We might be able to do it, we might be not, but it's good to let us know as soon as possible. Next, another compulsory field. The session doesn't have the conference doesn't have a theme, but we want to focus on the strategic commitments of the Ecsite community. There's a list of them. The sessions who push our community in helping with those commitments will be scored better. So if you have a connection, an idea in one of those topics, please just mark it and give us a little bit of a justification. So we also can relate to that when we scale sessions. Of course, sometimes sessions that don't touch on those topics will be accepted, but this would need a bit of a justification too. You need to pick one or pick none of the above. And also there's a list of keywords for you to choose one. Those keywords more or less follow the areas of work in a typical science museum, science engagement institution. This is more for participants to know that if they are working in collections, your session will be connected with collections. Plenty of sessions fall into the very general topic, science loves society. So if you don't have a clear idea on what to do, I can bet this will end up here. So until this point, basically, if besides the last point I will be talking at the end, if you filled all those things, you can submit your session, meaning you can save it and get back to it to edit it later. But of course, to have the session in the program, you need people who will attend, who will be your speakers or your workshop leaders, however you want to deliver your content. We are looking usually for a minimum 3 people involved in the session and a facilitator. A facilitator is a person who facilitates the session, makes sure it happens from the beginning till the end, and leads the session. It's usually useful in formats like panels, when there's someone who introduces different people and makes sure that the whole panel is quite incoherent. Sometimes in terms of workshops, all the speakers are facilitators in a way. So this is not a compulsory field, but maybe I will, in my session, I will add myself, which is Wiktor, to be a facilitator. You can add more of them. And then there's place for you to add speakers. Let's say Brad will be my speaker, and I can add him. What I'm doing here, and it's an important point, I'm adding speakers using their Ecsite website accounts. So all of your speakers also need this kind of account to be submitted as a part of the session proposal. Make sure they have one. In other cases, it might be a little bit difficult to add them, or even impossible without mailing me and asking for my help. Brad will contribute, and this is a part of the program that will be visible on our website, but also it's very helpful for the ACPC to judge the sessions. Brad will contribute with program committee. I always have issues with this word. Committee perspective on the submissions. You'll notice here that we will also there's also an option at this conference to speak remotely. The whole conference is in person. There is no online participation possible, but we will offer a limited number of spots for speakers to speak on Zoom. We want through this to open the conference more for people who wouldn't normally come to the conference, to broaden the perspective of the session. Those speakers don't have to cover the conference fee because they're basically speaking for a bit of time and don't participate in the whole experience of the conference. And if you have someone who would be a good addition, a fresh perspective on the field, someone from outside of the field, you can submit a person to speak remotely with a bit of a justification. There's no justification for Brad, though, so I will not be filling this. The program committee will be also looking at this and then selecting the sessions accordingly. We cannot afford that many of those opportunities, there'll be a limited number to maybe 1 or 2 sessions during a session slot with online speakers. But if you see this is add-on to your content, that's a really good point to remember about. And last but not least, as a community that is committed to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, we want our submitters to reflect on the equity and inclusion of their session. Have a look at the speakers you are submitting. Are they different genders? Do they represent different projects from different countries, different backgrounds? Does your topic broaden our look on the equity? Maybe you have some ideas how to make the session more accessible. Please put a few words here. And this is also one of the assessment criteria. We'll be looking at whether the session is in spirit of the values of our network. I will just add a little heart here as a placeholder. And by clicking that, publish, you get your session published. What does that mean? That means that, primary keyword, I forgot about this. Here you go. Did I forget anything else? I'm not sure. Done. After publishing, your session is visible to all other logged in users of the website. If you go to a call for proposals page, you can also view all the sessions submitted so far. Spoiler, there's no sessions submitted so far for this year. Hopefully they will come soon after this help session. All of your speakers and yourself and your facilitator will get an email, automated email from our system with a link to the session and a bit of a session abstract too, so you know that you submitted that. Through those emails, we will also communicate the feedback from the program committee and any other things we would like you to know. The person who submits the session, so the person who physically puts all those things and submits the session, becomes in our system a session author. For me, this is a very important contact, because if I have any questions about the session or any kind of communication need to do, I will be contacting this particular person. As an author, you can also be a speaker, you can also be a facilitator, but not both, hopefully. But if you want to have someone else facilitating and speaking, and you are just responsible for the session to happen, organizing it, bringing everything together, you will be the contact point if you submit the proposal. So the one who clicks publish button will be then contacted at some point, possibly by me, for any details missing or anything I would like to talk about. To access your session, you can also go to your profile on the Ecsite website, and they will be listed here together with your role. So I'm authoring this session. I can get back to it and edit it. The sessions can be edited, and you can go back to them as much as you like until the end of the call. Let me show you briefly the schedule of the call. We close the option of editing the sessions at 31st October this year. After that, the program committee, ACPC, will be assessing the sessions, and around mid-December, you will get feedback from the committee. It can be a yes, a no, unfortunately, but also yes in condition. Sometimes the committee has some questions or suggestions for the session. Then you will get a feedback with some suggestions how to improve it to have it accepted in the program. After that, there's time more or less to mid-January to again edit the sessions, do any changes. And after mid-January, the program is finalized, published, and there's nothing else to do besides preparing the session and coming to Malta. I promise I will also speak about other speaking opportunities. If you feel that a session is something too big for you, and for example, you would like to speak alone, there are a couple of opportunities. There's a traveling exhibition showcase. If you are a producer or you're renting traveling exhibitions, you can show off your newest exhibitions during this showcase. There's a project showcase for people who are part of non-profit collaborative projects where 3 or more institutions work together. And there's a grand bazaar for hands-on activities. If you are doing science shows, science workshops, you can also present them at this conference. Instructions how to submit to those are here on the call page. Basically, you submit your pitch, and the facilitators and authors of the sessions will have a look at them by mid-December and decide whether they'd like you to participate in the session or no. For the Grant Bazaar, it's a little bit different. You just have to mail me, but everything is written here. And soon we will be also adding a makerspace. If you have a making session or some ideas how to contribute to a makerspace program, there will be a chance to do that too. And that's all for me. And before I open the floor for questions, I would like to invite Brad to give you a few tips from the chairperson of the program committee perspective.
Yeah, first of all, lovely to see you all, and thank you so much for being interested in Ecsite and submitting a session. As Wiktor said, I'm part of the annual conference program committee. It's a group of about 10 or 12 people from science centres and museums all across Europe who come together on a regular basis to pull this conference together with the big task of looking over the hundreds of applications we get to create the conference program. And a couple of things which I think are really useful to think about is, for me, I'm really interested in three kind of things. The first is the content. So are you proposing an idea that feels fresh, innovative, that's challenging us as a sector of museum and science centre professionals? So are you putting forth something that feels really progressive, really interesting, that hasn't really been done before, that's pushing things forward? So that's number one, content really is key. Number two, are you inviting a group of speakers who feel really diverse? And by diverse, I mean in every aspect. So have you got a really good mix of genders on the panel? Have you really thought about where all these different people come from? So are you getting a great geographic mix? So you're not just having a whole lot of people from one institution talk about one thing. You're pulling together different people with different perspectives who can speak to the content or topic that you want to address. So that diversity is really important. And then I think for me, the final thing that I know the committee really loves is when they see a proposal where the people have really thought about how they share that content in an interesting and potentially different way. So, you know, sometimes a panel is the best way to do that. But with Ecsite, I think we really all come from such kind of creative institutions. The things we get excited about from a committee point of view is when someone's come up with a really clever idea to convey that content to the audience at the conference. And I think over the last couple of years, we've had some really great ideas from courtroom battles where, you know, people pick a particular topic and then debate it from different perspectives. You know, new ideas that feel like it's pushing us again as a sector. So for me, there's three things. It's content, it's that diversity of who's speaking, and then it's some real thought as to what is the best format to convey these ideas to the people in the audience. And, you know, I'll say one more thing. Having been to Ecsite for a number of years, I have put proposals in at the very last minute, and they never used to get accepted because they always feel rushed and panicked. The more time you can think about it, the more people you can get aligned to your idea, the better the proposal will be. So I hope that's helpful in terms of tips. This year around, we've put together a bit of a criteria assessment rubrics, which is also on the website, that kind of shows you what we're looking for and how we score things. And again, that's a useful document on the website just for you to have a look at to understand what really gets a great application through those scoring rounds that the ACPC does. So Wiktor, should I stop there and should we open it up for questions?